Hello summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides video. With the release of Sett, otherwise known as the boss, we want you guys to know everything about him. Don't fret, we've got you guys covered as always, because in this video we are going to go over all of the builds that pro players are using on Sett to help give some insight into what you should be doing in your own games. Do us a favor though, and help us out by answering our question of the day. Which of Sett's abilities do you like the most? I'm not expecting most people to answer with his Q by the way, but for me, I personally like his E. I really feel like it takes the concept of Thresh's Flay, but made it even cooler. Being able to throw two people into each other and stun them really reminds me of some of the coolest fight scenes from movies and shows. Also, are you guys getting ganked in your own lane? Constantly demolished? Well, don't worry because we've got you covered. ProGuides is the #1 proven way to quickly level up your League of Legends skills. Whether you are looking for tier lists, champion guides, coaching, or courses from your favorite pro players, ProGuides is where you'll find them. Even players like Nightblue, Bunny Fufu, and Loco Doco support ProGuides, so what are you waiting for? Click the link to start improving right now, and let's get started with the video. First things first, let's talk about the stuff that there's basically no debate about. Everyone is currently using these runes for their bonus stats: attack speed, adaptive force, and then armor or MR. Although Sett does have good AD ratios, running some attack speed on him is essential. His right punch comes out at 6 times the speed of his left, meaning that running any attack speed will have 6-fold the effect on every other auto attack. For your flex, you'll want to take the adaptive force since Sett does like to duke it out with his enemies. Running adaptive force also helps out his auto attack damage a lot since every other auto attack comes out quickly. While Sett does have the tools in his kit to survive fights, taking armor or MR is usually going to be the best choice. This is because Sett gains a lot of bonus health regeneration as well as his temporary shield from his W, so running armor makes each health point that he recovers or each point of damage that he blocks a lot more valuable. The other things that are pretty common are variables of some of the runes that players are taking on him, such as Conquer, Triumph, and Last Stand, because these are basically the best choices by far when compared to some of the alternatives. I also want to note that we're seeing Sett being played in both the top lane and the jungle, and there is a game of where we've even found him in the support role, but we'll briefly touch that at the end. Let's start off by talking about a top lane build that we expect to be Sett's bread and butter. The biggest difference that we're seeing in Sett builds right now is more focused on the item builds, so let's talk about those first. We've seen Cabochard, Team Vitality's top laner, use this build in a couple of his games. It's a pretty well-rounded build, taking advantage of Sett's brawl-heavy playstyle, giving him some tankiness alongside his high damage output. He builds Black Cleaver, Ninja Tabi, Sterix Gauge, Guardian Angel, Spirit Visage, and a Mortal Reminder or Executioner's Calling. Overall, it's a standard bruiser build actually, very similar to something that you'd see on like Renekton. This has some flexibility though, as the Executioner's Calling was an item specifically that he built for his top lane matchup in one of those games. You could therefore replace that item with whatever you really feel like that you might need. Obviously, Spirit Visage healing makes sense at first because of his health regen on his passive and the healing from Conqueror, but against more magic-heavy teams that spam the same ability or deal damage over time, you would definitely prefer Adaptive Helm. Black Cleaver is the core item on this build. With the removal of the true damage conversion from Conqueror, it's really hard to crack through tankier foes, so Black Cleaver's armor shred really helps out Sett, as well as his teammates break down the juggernauts and the tanks. The reason that it's such a good pickup on Sett is also the fact that he can stack it up just so quickly. His attacks come out so fast, and he can go for a quick reset with his Q, quickly applying all 4 stacks, and then getting one last stack after he casts any other ability for the 5 stacks he needs. Cooldown reduction is also essential on Sett, as he really relies heavily on his W, E, and R in teamfights. So building CDR allows him to have his ultimate ready for every teamfight, while also allowing him to stall more time with shields from W and stuns from E. If they don't have like a Soraka or a Vladimir and you're not forced to go Executioners, you definitely want to try to get 40% CDR on Sett. Death Dance, Duskblade, or Ghostblade can really help out with that. If that's not enough to convince you, then Black Cleaver also provides bonus movement speed after you attack or kill a unit, and this is essential for Sett as he really relies on this to stay in basic attack range. As for his runes, let's really run down the line. Conqueror is easily the best and most consistent rune to take. He stacks it up really easy, has a lot of AD ratios, and of course benefits heavily from the healing that it provides. Since Conqueror is his best keystone, you're stuck with the precision tree. That sucks. However, Triumph is the best choice in its tier because Presence of Mind doesn't really do anything for Sett, while Overheal is suboptimal since he really lacks a lot of lifesteal early on. Cabochard has been running Alacrity, which works really well because of the nature of his passive. The extra attack speed really does make him an even bigger threat during the laning phase. However, Tenacity is also an alternative to this, but we'll cover that in a bit. Last Stand is usually the rune of choice that everyone is taking. We haven't seen anyone opt into taking Coup de Grace over it, and this is because Last Stand provides more bonus damage when active, and Sett likes to hover around a lot of low health, especially during the laning phase. His best trades come when he first takes a bunch of damage, and then turns the fight around with his W and chunks his enemies while shielding him. This of course means that naturally, he'll be pretty low during most of his fights, so Last Stand, much like on Kled, is super efficient. For his secondary runes, Cabochard chooses to run Bone Plating alongside Revitalize. Bone Plating is a natural pickup for more aggressive top laners and melee champions alike, and of course the insane amount of damage that it blocks favors champions who like to play very aggressive. Revitalize synergizes very well with Sett's W, and of course is a solid pickup if you have any teammates that provide shields or heals. Alternatively, you could also take Shield Bash over Revitalize if you have a really easy matchup, but in most cases Revitalize is a safe choice. Next up, we're going to talk about a more aggressive Glass Cannon build that some players are trying out. Well, maybe Glass Cannon is the wrong way to put it, but that's how the build at least starts. Both Cabochard and Finn have ran this build in a couple of their games. While it eventually comes to include a Black Cleaver, they both opted to buy lethality items very early on. A Ghostblade first item followed by a Duskblade as a second item gives Sett a lot more power behind his punches during the early game. While this does leave him a lot squishier, both of them opted to round out this build with a Sterix and a Black Cleaver, which were included in the previous build that we mentioned. Ultimately, Sett still ends up being roughly the same type of champion later on, but this build does trade tankiness for a lot more damage earlier on, so you might have more kill pressure on your lane opponent and also carry the early skirmishes harder. Of course, you might be able to snowball quite a bit. Ghostblade is pretty powerful as it is, and it helps Sett run to lane faster. Think about it like a boots purchase that actually gives you damage. The second that it also provides a lot of value during combat because Sett is a fist fighter who needs to stay in melee range, and Ghostblade's active will allow Sett to stay toe-to-toe with his opponents and chase them down. Duskblade, on the other hand, can be a little bit more difficult to utilize. Luckily, top lane does have a lot of bushes, so it's not impossible to make use of its bonus damage. If you're planning on flanking during early skirmishes, the extra burst of Duskblade really does provide a big help. Also, by building these two items, you're able to cap out at 40% CDR once you finish the Black Cleaver, and that Armor Shred will help out the lethality. To compensate for the less tanky build, it's also advisable that you finish off a Guardian Angel. Since you're going to be much squishier and harder to single out and burst down your opponents, you're more likely to get bursted down yourself. Having a Guardian Angel will make your opponents end up overcommitting and trying to shut you down, and then it might give your team an advantage. Alright, next up, let's talk a little bit about the jungle. Sett is a pretty powerful jungler as he is, because he really has the tools necessary to clear both single target and multi-target jungle camps. This is a build that Misfits jungler Razork has been using while playing Sett in the jungle. He starts with the Warrior enchantment and then transitions into a typical Black Cleaver, Sterix, GA, and then any item of choice to follow. We suggest either a Spirit Visage, Randuin's, or Titanic Hydra if you're winning really hard. This build is more centered around damage, so the GA once again helps out a lot. Sett really needs to find himself in sticky situations sometimes in order to deal damage. His ultimate literally throws him into the team if you ult a big tank. The biggest thing to note about the jungle build is the choice of secondary runes. Within the precision tree, Razork took Tenacity over Alacrity, but this comes down to which champions are on the enemy team. For his secondary runes, he opts to take Perfect Timing and Cosmic Insight instead of the usual Resolve Tree runes that we did see in the top lane. Cosmic Insight feels like a default choice because none of the other runes in the row or the one above hold that much value. The real point of taking Inspiration as a secondary tree is to access the stopwatch via Perfect Timing. Sett is a phenomenal tower diver. He essentially has a shorter ranged Vi ultimate, crowd control, and can tank a ton of turret damage with a well-timed W. However, his biggest issue is getting out, and that's what the stopwatch is for. In cases where you don't have flash or need to commit harder to a dive, stopwatch will enable Sett to dive even harder and secure the kill. One solid dive past the 10-minute mark can usually lead to several plates, or tanking the entire turret for free, getting the stopwatch off, and then maybe you can even take the turret after. This can accelerate the game significantly, and then there are also kind of moves that you can make as a jungler trying to break the game open. Maybe you can get objectives after that, like Dragon or Rift Herald. Finally, we did promise you an oddball build, and Mickey X has been playing him as a support to decent success. However, we believe that Sett can only have a place in the bottom lane against a melee support, or if the enemy bot laner is a melee champion, and this is because he just doesn't have the capability to reach range targets without taking a bunch of damage in the process. In the specific game we're looking at, he was facing off against a Leona support, meaning that he could act to either counter-engage or try to scrap it against his opponent counterparts. We don't want to completely write off support Sett, but we will just have to see. It's unlikely that he will continue to be a situational pick, but he could still be there. In this support build, we're going to note that he does take Aftershock, which obviously helps him take less damage during trades, and he can use Sett's E to activate it really easily. For items, it's also worth noting that he built Righteous Glory since Sett's hard engage and backline access is a little bit lackluster. Having it allows him to easily reach his priority targets and hit big ultimates or big E's. We've been hyping up Conqueror a lot, and with good reason. We believe it's his strongest rune, but there is one alternative keystone like Grasp of the Undying or even Press the Attack. Sett's auto attack pattern is really quick, and it does allow him to quickly activate Press the Attack and then back out if he wants to. If you're planning on going for extremely short trades, or you want to increase the damage outputs of your teammates, you can give Press the Attack a go. Make sure to run Alacrity with it as your auto attacks are going to be important. Obviously, Grasp of the Undying could hold a place too. It's a keystone that you want to consider in more difficult or a losing matchup. Logically, if you feel like you're not going to win a fight, it doesn't make sense to take any extended trades. Instead, you will charge up Grasp of the Undying on the minion wave, take a very short trade with your opponent, and then back off. You'll use all of your abilities to poke and disengage, and you can always passively hold on to your Grasp for moments where your opponents come onto you. So if you hit them with it and immediately back off, you'll be much safer. There are more upcoming changes to Omnistone as well, and it's likely that Sett might be able to utilize it. He can use many keystones pretty well. Press the Attack like we said, Electrocute, Conqueror, Hail of Blades, Predator, Grasp of the Undying, even Aftershock, they're all usable. While Conqueror is his best rune, the fact that he'll be able to access so many that he uses decently well in a short span of time also means there's some potential for it, and it might be viable. Our final takeaway, Black Cleaver and Sett jungle in top lane is just too good. His synergy with both Conqueror and Black Cleaver is just way too important, and the stats that it gives him are way too good. It literally provides him with everything that he needs. You can opt for a more traditional Juggernaut or Bruiser setup, building a bunch of health and some damage items, or you can opt to start off with some lethality and eventually transition into a typical Bruiser build. That's up to you, but try out Conqueror and Black Cleaver before you do anything. That's going to conclude this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys want more content to help you improve, check out ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with pro players to create guides designed to help you take your game to the next level. Also, keep an eye out on our YouTube channel, where we are constantly uploading it every single day with new content just like this. Good luck on the Rift, and we will see you all next time.